Calvin T. Mann, leading EMIY, served over 20,000 youth through speaking, coaching, and mentoring. He has inspired us for years. Welcome to EMIY TV Podcast with your host, Calvin T. Mann, the Encourager.
Good afternoon to you all, and yes, I am the host today, but no, I'm not Calvin Mann today. This is Hetheru. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today. So today, I will be flying solo, and what that means is that all of the information that I am providing to you today, I would encourage you right now to get your notebook, get your pen, because I have some things that I need to share. Today, we are going to talk about the 12 days of healing strategies to kick off the new year. So between now and January 1st, I want to share with you some strategies so that you can be prepared to take your next step into 2022. And let me just start by saying that 2022 is a very, very powerful year for people who walk in their spiritual calling and who are on this spiritual journey to have the greater and deeper understanding of the meaning, not only of your life, but where you fit in this life and what you came here to do this lifetime. So I'm going to give you 12 different strategies. Some you may have heard before, but I want to kind of elaborate on a few of them today. But again, the number is 12 as we're preparing for the year 2022. I want to start off by sharing with you just a quick definition of how I look at spirituality and how I look at metaphysics, because a lot of what we talk about cover that ground. So I consider it the deeper meaning in things. And so for spirituality, how I define it is the conscious aspects of living that affect your well-being and exploration of your inner self and your journey. So when I'm speaking of spirituality, I'm looking at the conscious decisions that we make. It is how it affects our well-being, how it affects our lives, and how it affects this way of life that we call our journey. And the other definition I want to share with you is metaphysics. And metaphysics is the fundamental study and practice of concepts that explore the nature of our existence. And so you could have a metaphysical conversation about how your relationship to words. You could have a deeper meaning and understanding of metaphysics that way. Maybe for you, it's the relationship with numerology or astrology. Some people look at that as another way. Some look at it through the lens of health and wellness and well-being. So there is no wrong way to study or the exploration of this journey of the nature of our existence. So for each individual, we're going to look at it a little bit differently, and we're going to have a little bit of a different experience. But today, these healing strategies that I want to share with you, I think are extremely important to this journey in 2022. And I know I keep saying that, but I want you to get a little bit of deeper insight into the year that we're going into. For those of you who look at numbers and numerology for the language, the hidden language in those numbers, I'm going to give you just a little bit of insight. So one is going to be that when you look at the number 2022, the goal in numerology and looking at it as a deeper language is to reduce numbers to its lowest form. So to reduce a 2 and a 0, that's going to give you the vibration of 2. When you have double numbers, 22, or you have triple numbers, 222, which is what we're going into 2022, what we're looking at is a very powerful, higher vibration number, higher vibration year. And so because it's the number 2 and it's tripled, that means it's 3 times as powerful as it would be as a 2-digit number. So when we look at 22, we're looking at another level of a master number. So when you see double digits like that, they're considered the master numbers. So as we look at the year 22 as a triple digit number, I want you to also understand that as we're going into 2022, we're going into a highly feminine energy and energetic year. So that means that there's going to be a lot of work with the feminine energy. That means that it doesn't mean female, it means feminine. Feminine is the creative, feminine is the spiritual, feminine is the receptive and the manifesting principle. Very important to understand the nature of the feminine that I'm speaking of, not female. Very clear distinction. We are leaving 2021, which if you add those numbers down to a single digit, is a 5. 5 is as a odd number. It is a masculine number. So the year 2021, we're coming out of a highly masculine time, masculine energy. So that was logic. People trying to make sense of the conspiracy theories, analytical, protective. That's what we're coming out of. And so between both years, everyone is in, or let me not say everyone, the energy is around seeking the balance between the masculine and feminine and the physical and spiritual. So when you feel that rise in you where you're looking for the deeper meaning of things that are in your life and your well-being and the journey, when you start looking at inner self and your journey, that's when you know you're looking at things through a spiritual lens. How it impacts you, how it impacts others. That's when you know that you're looking spiritual. When it's reduced to just the physical, like illnesses and physical pain, there's still a way to explore that more deeply when you look at it through a spiritual lens. That means you're looking for the well-being, the exploration, and how it's impacting your journey. So we're looking underneath what's happening to us physical. And I'm encouraging you to look at this journey that we're going to take in these next 12 steps, that you look at this through a physical lens and a spiritual lens. So the idea is that we start the process of balancing those two as we go into 2022. So I want to talk a little bit about what healing strategies really are. Healing strategies are tools that guide us to reflection. They guide us to peace, forgiveness, love, and truth. That's really what we need healing strategies to do. Those are tools. And if you look at situations and circumstances through a different lens and shift in perspective, it'll help you to broaden how you see situations. And then as you're learning to do that, to get better at removing the judgment. The judgment is the right, the wrong, the good, and the bad. If you can pause a moment in your reflective process and remove the good, bad, right, or wrong, you're able to see closer to that lesson, to explore, right, that deeper inner meaning for you individually, and then start looking at that collectively and into your legacy. So legacy being the 3 generations that come after you. So that would be your children and your grandchildren and even their children. So 3 generations before you and 3 generations behind you. And I'm going to talk to you about that a little bit more in one of these 12 steps. The next thing I want to share with you is an understanding of what we're actually healing during this time and this season. So giving you some direction on where you should be focusing your healing tools, your healing strategies, and this reflective work. So the areas that we need healing are the areas that typically bind our lives to the past, to doubt, to unresolved issues, to pain, and to loss, and also to the loss of your own identity. These are the spaces that we need the most healing. And so the 12 steps that we're going to go into now are designed to help you guide into this reflective process and also help you to see that there are areas in our lives that we're bound. And that binding causes wounds, and those wounds tend to bleed. Those wounds tend to hurt, especially when they're touched. And that could be directly or indirectly. And because we haven't been healed, we start to hurting people hurt people. And that starts a whole cycle and chain of behaviors that can have a ripple effect, not just on you, but from you outwardly to your family, your loved ones, to your friends, and then into your communities and the spaces that we occupy. And that's a lot of what we see. We see a lot of spaces where people are still bound and their wounds are open, or their wounds are bleeding, or their wounds are not healed. And so I want to give you some tools today, 12 of them. So again, if you don't have your notebook, pen, and paper, I encourage you to do that so that you don't lose any of this good information. All right, so the first tool that I want to share with you, and this is the understanding that change is a process. And change often requires a catalyst. And sometimes that catalyst is pain. Pain is a horrific motivator, but it is a motivator. And so the idea is that we don't let things get too far or so far that it's painful for us. Physically painful for us, emotionally painful for us. So we want to make sure that in this journey, as we're going into 2021, that these are some of the things that you're reflecting on. And these are some of the wounds that you're identifying, because if you haven't identified those wounds, those areas where you're still hurting and hurt people, then you're going to go into 2022 and it's going to be a very rude awakening for you, because 2022 is about this place of healing. So if you don't do it willingly, that means that there are going to be a chain reaction of things that are going to take place to get your attention, to put you on this path of healing. And it's important to recognize that that is removing the judgment out of it. Remember, we're trying to remove the good, bad, right, and wrong from our journey, from our past, as we look at our history. That's a really important part of this process. So I'm going to give you the 5 steps to change. This is an important piece to embrace in these healing strategies. You have to recognize that it is awesome to have the intention for change, but the actual process takes more than just your intention. It takes attention to the details. And I'm going to give you the 5 steps of the details. The first one is that you need new information. New information. So new information could be the perspective that you hear something, and I pray that something I share with you today is going to offer you some new information. The second thing that you need is appreciation. So when somebody gives you something, if somebody gives you a gift and you're like, oh, well, thanks, that's nice, and then it goes and it sits on your shelf and you don't actually use it in the way that it was meant, or receive it in the way that it was meant, that's just a lack of appreciation. And so when you get this new information, you have to have some value and connection to it in order for you to proceed through the next stages of change, these next steps of change. So the third process is application. So what you've learned, say that you learned today about the wounds and that they're binding to your past. And when you haven't addressed or reflected on your past, it's holding you captive, and it's holding you in that space where when the topic comes up, it hurts you to have the conversation, or it wells up in you anger or despair, or it makes you feel depressed, or it takes away from where you are right at that moment. That's how you know you're being bound by your wounds. So that's a really important piece. And so when you get the new information, the next step is to appreciate that information. Wow, okay, I understand that. Now I can do something with it. I'm going to do something with it because I have new information. The next thing you're going to do is apply it. So that's step 3. You have to apply the new information. Step 4 is the transformation process. The time between you applying something and being transformed by it can be up to 63 days. And so what I mean by that is it takes 10 to 21 days first to form a new habit. So just to get in the process of doing something new, trying something new, feeling something new, establishing something new. So between application and transformation, just like when you start a job. Remember, it used to be that your probation was between 60 and 90 days, and so, for some companies it still is. That's your probationary period. That is the time where your employers are looking at you to see if you are transformed to that culture of that organization, that business. So they're looking for how you are conforming to this new environment, conforming to this new way of life, conforming to these new ideas and the new information that you're now applying. So that transformation process, again, it could take up to 63 days. So one thing that's happening in that time of between application and transformation is that your body is going through a biochemical process. That means your mind, your brain, all of those things are lining up to take this new information and become a part of it. It's a process. So allow yourself the time and the consistency in this process for the transformation to take place. And you will recognize that you have completed that transformation process, as others will recognize it too, because you will be in the fifth stage, which was actually elevation. You are now above that wound, that past situation or circumstances. You have elevated beyond the pain when it's mentioned. You're no longer bound by the sight of someone who hurt you. You're no longer captive to the anger that went along with that. This is a very important process of change. These are some of the clues and cues that you need to know that you have overcome. And so that is just step one in our 12-step healing strategies that I want to share with you. So the first one, again, change is a process. The second one is there are 5 shifts that often are necessary to get us on track, to help us to recognize, something is out of order, I'm out of order, and there's something that needs to be done. So it comes in 5 ways. The first one is a trigger. The trigger could be, as I mentioned in the past, the first step one, the trigger could be that it's someone who you had a relationship with and maybe it didn't end well. Maybe just the sight of that person causes anger to well up in you because of how it ended in a way that was maybe not as healthy for either of you. So the process of getting back on track actually takes a trigger. Maybe you have to see that person with someone else and see them happy. And that's now your trigger to say, wow, I can be happy. I want to be happy. If that's what it takes to get you on this road to healing, then that's what it takes. But to recognize that the trigger was not for you to lash out at the person. The trigger was to bring to your awareness, to bring to your conscious decision making that there is something that needs to be done and needs to be done next. So that's the trigger. The second the second shift that gets us back on track is timing. Timing is an excellent way to get us back on track. The time to start a small business would have been 2021 going into 2022 or wrapping up in 2021, because there was a lot of small business opportunities, grants and incentives and supplemental income and all of these opportunities that were all of these opportunities that were available, but it had to do with timing. They were very time sensitive, and they came at the right time when during the initial pandemic, where people were thinking, wow, I should start a business. I'm good at this. I always wanted to have my business. And now there were some level of seed money available to help you to expand, to start and or expand a business. That's a timing issue. So the time is right, and you recognize that the time is right for you to take that next step to healing. And so maybe you were looking to heal in your finances, and the extra $250 that the government has been given as incentive throughout this year, maybe the timing of that $250 was perfect for you to do something to help you with your healing strategy. Maybe that was enough to pay for the counseling or the therapy that you needed. Maybe that was enough for the rest of the down payment that you needed to move to a new place. Maybe that $250 allowed you to get whatever it was that was holding you back resolved. And again, that's a timing issue. That's a timing matter. And that timing matter could also lead you to your healing strategy. Maybe the timing was that you needed to hear these 12 steps today to get you on the path to healing for 2022. Maybe you didn't know where to start, and now you have 2 tools right now to make that change. The third one is opportunity, but we talked a little bit about opportunity. But the fourth one, which is a really big one, which is around being motivated and or inspired. This is the value that we have from motivational speakers and the memes that people see every day, or those words of encouragement that the people who care about you send or post on social media. Those words of encouragement that you needed. That might be just the inspiration that you needed to take this next step to your own healing. I don't want to be the person that I was in 2021. Now I want to be this new person. And this particular, maybe it was a scripture, maybe it was a idea, maybe it was an image. That thing motivated, inspired me to now do my next best thing, live my next best life. The fifth one is consequences. Consequences is an awesome motivator too. It's not one that we like, but sometimes having not made choices or standing back and not making decisions, the consequences of the lack of decision, maybe that was the thing that you needed to heal. So because you didn't deal with your emotional issues, maybe that was the last thing that your mate needed to say that, okay, we can't do this anymore. The consequences of your inaction to healing and to growing and to maybe taking a different perspective or have a level of different understanding about something that was said, maybe the consequences of not doing that caused a chain reaction that set you in motion. So now you have to go through that process of change. Again, this is not about judgment, not good, bad, right, or wrong, but this is just about a process to get you to your next level. Okay? So the third one is the areas of focus for a meaningful new year. So I want to share with you these 5 areas of focus. The first one, and I think the most important one for us, is self-care. That we have to make time and take time for self-care. Self-care is a part of this healing process that we're talking about. Self-care says that I know I'm not getting enough exercise and I need to walk more. I need to walk up and down the steps. I need to do stretches. I need to do meditation. Self-care focuses on just that self-healing, focus, discipline, consistency. Self-care is one of the most important tools that you're going to have going into 2022. Another important piece that you need to make sure that you have in areas of focus is family. Family is part of a legacy. That means that what you do now not only impacts you and those who love you and those you love, but it also means that whatever you're doing and saying is being imprinted in your DNA. That means that it's a memory imprint that is a part of you now, that's a part of your DNA code that you have now passed on to that next generation. So to your children, when you say things like, you act just like my grandmother, you act just like my mom, or you act just like your father, or you act just like your mother, when you're saying that, what you're actually calling to surface is that DNA imprint. And sometimes people may not have had a relationship with that person, so they may not have had the exposure to them in the same way that they would pick up on a behavior or a pattern. But that's how you know that you have that confirmation that what you say and what you do is imprinted in your DNA and passed down through generations. So we want to make sure that what we're passing down through our legacy is healthy behaviors, healthy attitudes, healthy mindsets. That's a really important part of what we need to focus on for 2022. Another is spiritual balance. Spiritual balance. Remember, we're talking about the conscious aspects of living. The conscious aspects of living that impact or influence your well-being and your ability to explore who you are and who you are becoming. That's an important part that we're going into, is that spiritual balance. So what that means is you're looking for that equilibrium. You're looking for the things that you know make you happy, the things that you have experienced that make you sad or stressed. You want to find more of the things that make you happy so that you're not stressed. If you know the things that make you happy and you do those things and they're healthy for you, let me preface that. They have to be healthy activities and behaviors in order for you to have true balance. So that's an important piece. And then the last two are truth and identity. Truth. Your truth is what you have to uncover and discover. Your truth may be different from somebody else's truth. How you see the world through your lens and your experiences are your truth. But we are also looking to balance your truth with the truth. What is your guide, your barometer for what truth is for you? That's an important place to be for 2022, and as well as your identity. So your truth is going to be connected directly to your identity. Your identity is connected to your character, what you believe, your values, what you practice. Those things are very important. And so that's a very important tool and mindset to have as we take this next journey. So number 4, this is a big one, and I kind of touched on it earlier, but this process of healing strategies, number 4 on the list is healing old wounds. Healing old wounds. And for a lot of people to bring up and to stir up or disturb what you have covered up and buried, it's still not healed. If you've only covered it up, if you've only buried it and tried to suppress it, it's still there and it's still causing damage to your relationships. It's still causing damage to your journey, to your vision, and to your identity, and to your character, because ultimately it's going to cave in. That dirt that you kept pouring over this gaping hole is going to ultimately sink. And so to prevent that sinking, you want to try to do your best to heal those wounds and not cover them up. Sometimes that healing takes professional help. That takes a therapist or a counselor or wise counsel or coach or a motivator. You or your spiritual connectedness. Find what that tool is and that resource that's best for you. Make sure you do that. But the first step in healing old wounds is to start with your why. Why did this happen? Why does it hurt? Why am I not over it? Why didn't I forgive? Those are kind of questions to get started. The next question is, what still hurts when it's triggered? What is the trigger that starts the pain cycle to happen? That's a really important piece of this process. And then third, what you want to do is, as a solution to this, is to write yourself, I call this the honesty letter. The honesty letter, where you can spill and fill your truth on paper, your experiences. And we're not talking about whether it was right, wrong, good, or bad. This is your truth because it's your experience that you're having at that moment. We're trying to get to the underlying root cause of why this old wound hasn't healed or won't heal. So when you start writing the honesty letter, you start by saying, Dear Hetheru, I need to be honest with you about how I really feel. And then you proceed to talk about whatever that old hurt is, whatever that wound feels like. Whenever I hear the Isley Brothers song, In Between the Sheets. I have the emotional meltdown, and I don't want to feel this way anymore. I don't like how I feel or what I'm holding on to. I mean, you really, in this honesty letter, you're really giving your honest truth about what you feel and why. Because when you see it written down, it has a healing property of its own. The words that you're speaking and releasing can be then healed, and now you know what you're working on. So that's a very important part of this process of healing old wounds. So the first, I'm going to repeat it. The first is to start with your why. The second step is understanding why it still hurts and what is the trigger to that hurt. And the final thing is, as a solution strategy, as a healing strategy, write yourself the honesty letter. And this is not for anyone else to see, but it is a tool that you may need to help you to see it for yourself. Once you start writing it, then the process of healing starts to take place. And you're no longer holding that within you. So I'm going to the next set of these 12 lessons around healing strategies to kick off the new year. Number 5 is defining and refining love. Now, we use the word love very loosely, and some of us have never really defined first what love is. We talk about the emotional response to it. We don't often talk enough about the action part of it. And so if you need a place to start, there's a scripture that talks about, and I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's 2 Corinthians. I think it's 2 Corinthians, but I'll have to get that, make sure that I have that right. But it starts off, love is patient, love is kind. And so I think that process, if you don't have a model of what love is, that's a place to start. Because everything it talks about in that particular scripture is an action step. It's not an emotion, it's an action step. And so if you can attach what we talk about as love in terms of actions, then that is at least a groundwork to start for defining what love is. Once you have a value system for love, now you can start to refine what that means. So refining it means, how do you take that from situation to situation, from person to person, from the different relationships that you might have. So my love for a friend may not be the same love I have for my child or for my parent or for my sibling. And my love for my sibling may not be the same love I have for my mate or somebody who has helped me through a challenging time in my life. Very important to refine what you mean when you use the word love, and don't use that because don't use the word without defining it first. And then defining it means that the actions that you expect to support that love should also be a part of the refining process. So step number 5, define and refine love. Remove self-gratification first, remove emotion, and substitute another word for love. What is another word that you could put in the place of love? I admire you. I trust you. I support you. If you can put those words in the place of love, that's another way to refine it. And when you act in the way that you define support, then that means that you are supporting that person in this way. So if you define it, you also have to refine it, but you also have to have a process. And I'm going to suggest that if you're able to substitute a word for love, do that. And if you're not living that, then that's not what you really mean. Love is really not the word that you really are expressing. If your love is just based on, I love the way you look, I love the way you touch me. If we're looking and defining love that way, or I love you because of that, and this is not about judgment. This is not about right, wrong, good, or bad. We're talking about healing strategies. What we say is very important. And that's going to bring us to one of our 12 steps. So Number 6, appreciating your gifts. This is a very important place of healing because it also helps you to recognize your value. When you appreciate your gift is a presence in the world. That's the first gift that you bring, is the presence that you have in the world. That's the first gift that you bring. The second one is, and can be defined as, your superpower. What is your superpower? What have you been born with that has been drawn out of you by circumstances that make you stronger or more thoughtful or more thought-provoking in an area, in a strength? Maybe your gift is that you have the gift of empathy. So there are a lot of people who are walking around who are empaths and may not know it. An empath is a person who has the ability to actually feel what other people feel just by being in contact or by being in the area where they are. And some people who are stronger empathically may have, distance may not be the issue. They may feel you through the phone. They may feel you and you're not communicating with them at all. But that particular gift, I call it superpower, that particular gift is one that has emerged and kind of exploded in our world. But it was that way because more people needed to be able to connect and feel other people in a way so that we have this level of compassion that starts to guide our behavior and our decisions. And it's no longer just the individual. It is the collective, because a family is made up of a collective. A community is made up of a collective. And if you can feel the way that someone else feels, it may give you a reason to pause before you react. That particular gift is really important. And then as you start to look at your gifts, you also start to look at the blueprint. What was your blueprint? Who was your blueprint? And then you'll start seeing some common ground. When you have common ground with somebody, that means there's something that you have that's similar, where you may have started. So maybe your common ground is that you went to elementary school together. Maybe that's your common ground. And from there, the relationship is building over time, over your young life, maybe over your adult life. Those things are important, just being able to have common ground. So number 6, appreciating your gifts is really important. Remembering that your gift, you're born with a gift, and first of all, it's your presence in the world. That's the first gift that you have. The second one is exploring what your other gifts are, and I'm calling them superpowers. So the things that make you different, that make you unique, that make you valuable. Those are things that you can add to your gifts. Number 7. Your spiritual economy, and this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier with your legacy. The spiritual economy is made up of 3 parts. The first one is your ability to complete that which was incomplete, to fix that which was broken, and to right those things that were wrong. And what that means is that 3 generations behind you, so that would be your parents, your grandparents, you make up that 3rd generation. Your parents and your grandparents may have done some things that need to be restored or repaired or changed or completed. Whatever that might be is what we're living in this generation, down to the 3rd and 4th generation, the 2nd and 3rd generations. The 4th generation would be your great-grandparents or your great-grandchildren. Where most of us have the most connection is through the generation, your children, and your grandchildren. And the reason why that's important is because God works in generations, and God works in generations for restoration as well. So what was not fixed, what was still not corrected, what was still left incomplete, God allows generations for that restoration to occur. So if it hadn't occurred in those previous generations, then you should be looking for it to occur in yours. And what is your role in making sure the restoration happens for your family? And for a lot of people, it's really referred to as blessings and curses. We've heard generational blessings and generational curses. Well, being able to reconcile that on your watch, right, where you are, is a very important part of this spiritual economy. And so if you're able to do that and recognize those things, and it may not be something that comes from your family. It may be something that comes outside from in the world, something that you feel so compelled to do, or so compelled to say, or so compelled to help. And it may be an individual that you help. It may be a cause that you're drawn to. When you feel that inner urging or unction to act and do something, it's telling you that this may be the way that you are experiencing that restoration in your generation, that you have been charged with making that restoration possible. That's a really important tool and a really important part going into 2022, because remember, 2022 is a highly spiritual time. It's a high time for your gifts to be online. It's a high time for seeking balance and understanding. And it's also, what I didn't mention before, it's a high time for your voice to be heard. This is the time for you to find your voice, your inner voice. So expect that there are going to be more podcast shows. Expect that there are going to be more writers, an explosion of authors. Expect those types of things to happen in 2022, because our voice has to be heard. And this is the time for that to happen. And remember, because we're going into a highly feminine time, that means that your creativity is going to increase, that the opportunity to build and to structure and to create things and to manifest them also is going to be high in 2022. So be sure that you're healing those wounds, because those open wounds will continue to hurt to get you to get to a place where these things are happening in your life. Number 8 is reflections of the rearview mirror. And what that means is that if you think about it, if you're in a car and you're looking in front of you, you're looking at your dashboard, right? You're looking at where you're going. You're looking at the things that are happening in front of you. There's a little mirror that's often in the middle for you to look to see what's happening behind you. It is not designed for you to turn around and relive what was behind you. It is, however, designed for you to reflect on what passed, not to live in that space, because you're continuously moving forward. And if you're trying to move forward and your head is turning back and you're looking and living in the past, that is how accidents happen. That's distracted driving. That's distracting you from your ultimate goal. That's distracting you from what's in front of you. It's designed for reflection only. And how we reflect and where we reflect is really important. So that goes back to the healing process of looking at the wounds. The wounds are the most obvious place to look for our healing. Those things that make us angry, those things that make us feel less than who we are, those things that cause a distraction or a delay. Those are wounds. They're really wounds that still have to be healed. And so the process that you go through to heal those wounds is going to be really, really very important moving into this new year, because we need these 12 days of healing. So number 9, this is the last set, and I'm going to move through these pretty well. The first one is physical and spiritual solutions. So for our pain, discomforts, disappointments, those things also point to a spiritual problem. So where are you not whole spiritually? And remember, we're talking about the conscious aspects of living that affect your well-being and your journey. So where are those things? Where are those things lacking? Where are you troubled in those areas? And where are you now feeling pain? So you might say that your back hurts, right? That's a physical pain. Where is the spiritual pain you may be experiencing? Are you not having somebody's back? Are you stepping back, walking back, moving back? Are you moving backward? So that might be a tip for you to really look at my physical wound may parallel with my spiritual wound. So if I'm not exploring my backstory, maybe I keep backstepping or sliding back into behaviors that I know that I've been delivered from, or that I know I need to put ownership to. Maybe that's why you're having back pain. Another example is people say that they have a headache, right? My head hurts. What are you thinking about? Are you having negative thoughts? Are you maintaining negative, entertaining negative imagery? Are you taking in things that that don't serve you? Are you heading in the wrong direction? Are you headstrong? Are you not open to hearing? So all of those things may be a window to that the symptoms of what you're feeling may have to require you to do a little bit more spiritual, deeper, reflective work on what you're thinking. That's a really important clue and cue that may lead you to the answer. That's a really important piece I want you to make sure that you have. The physical and the spiritual solutions, that sometimes they have a single parallel. And it seems so simple that it may just not be true, but it's something to explore. And that's what we do when we talk about spirituality. We're exploring our own well-being, consciously exploring it for the deeper meanings. Number 10, affirming what we want by what we say. Remember, 2022 is a manifesting year. What that means is when you align your thoughts, your words, and your actions or your deeds, that is a recipe for manifesting. That is a recipe for making things happen, from removing things from the spirit realm to the physical realm, right? That's a manifesting process. But your thoughts, your words, and your deeds or your actions have to line up. But you also have to be mindful of what you say, because you can cause a delay in that process by saying, I want to have a good time. And then you turn around and say, well, this is dangerous. I'll never do that, and I'll never do this. And we negate what we said that we wanted. We wanted to just have a good time. And we spoke the negative. We spoke what we didn't want, and not what we do want. We have a tendency to do that as people. Oh, well, no, they won't like me. I like so-and-so. I would love to date so-and-so, but they wouldn't like me. Okay, well, you just spoke it, that they're not going to like you, because you just spoke that word. And then you're going to act accordingly. So when somebody comes and says something to you, you're going to look at them like, no, they're not talking to me, so I'm going to ignore them. So your thoughts, your words, and your actions have to line up. They have to line up. And remember, they have to line up in the affirmative. That means you have to speak in affirmations, live in affirmations. That's a really important piece to know and understand, because you can affirm the negative and bring the negative into your world. Bring the negative into your experience. So be mindful of what you say and what you say about others. Be mindful of what you call your children. Be mindful of what you call and say to your mates. If you're not speaking positive, you're not speaking life. Life requires positive energy. It requires your attention and intention. Very important tool for healing. Number 11, walking our meridian path. Your meridian path is the path that is guided by the choices and decisions that you've made in your life. There are benchmarks. There are points in your life where a decision took you left versus right. So maybe a decision, and you ended up having children, and you had a goal of going to college, and because you had children, you didn't go to college right away. It delayed you for the 5 years that you needed to raise your children and focus on your family. It's not good, bad, right, or wrong. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the long way versus the short way to our goals and our dreams. Really important piece to make sure that we're looking at through the lens of healing. And for that, looking at our past benchmarks, where our lives took a turn, going to or away from what we really wanted to have or experience in our lives. So that's number 11, walking our meridian path. And number 12, is growing through the stages of grief. A lot of us have experienced a lot of grief over these last few months, over this last year. It's been a lot of losses, financially, relationships, loss of lives, kind of a loss of hope for some people, a loss of faith. Well, let me help you to recognize, one, the stages of grief. I want to make sure I leave you with that and leave you with some tools to be able to help you to overcome that grief. So this is from my book. This is one of my resources. This is called Cardinal in Red Dress, My Journey from the Valley of Death. This is one of my books. You can find it on Amazon. And I talk in the book about the stages of grief. So I just want to give you these quick steps. And again, I hope you're writing this down. This is a 10-step process of grief. So recognizing the stages that you're in is going to be important to you, working through the stages. One of the misunderstandings, I think, in the grieving process is that a lot of people don't know it's a process. So they think they're going to hurt forever. They think they're never going to heal. They're never going to be able to live without the person or the loss that they have. And I'm here to tell you that you can make it and you can survive. A big step is knowing where you are in the process. So these are the 10 steps. The first one is shock. That's often the initial stage of grief. And that's whether it's expected or not. It's unavoidable. Number 2 is an emotional release. So when the initial shock wears off, what happens to those unexpressed emotions? So we tend to cry. That's one of the ways that we release is we cry. We yell, we scream, we're angry. The next step is depression. Some people fall into depression, and that may be connected to loneliness or isolation. Number 4 is physical symptoms of distress. So sometimes grieving people start to have chest pains or headaches or shortness of breath. Those things often happen when people are going through the stages of grief. Anxiety is another one. Going into spaces where you may have shared with that person or what you have shared with whatever it was that you have lost. That anxiety that goes along with it makes you sometimes so anxious or hyperventilate that you can't be in that space. That's important to recognize. The next one, number 6, is called hostility. When you feel anger toward people who may have been around, anger toward yourself, anger about the circumstances. That's an important piece. That's a huge one. Number 7 is guilt, and that's the really strong emotion around regretting something that you said or did or didn't do. Or they said or didn't do. Number 8 is the inability to return to normal activity, feeling like you can't go back to something that you may have loved. Maybe you loved going to swimming, and now that loss has occurred, you don't want to go swim anymore. You don't want to dance anymore. You don't want to sing anymore. Those things, that's an important piece of the stage to know. The 9th stage is healing. And that's when you start to come to an understanding about the cycle of life, for one, and that person is no longer separated from you. And that leads you to the last stage of acceptance, when you get to the point where you recognize that life and death are on the same spectrum. You're born into the world, and then we exit this world in that same way. But we are still spiritually connected by the bonds of love and life that we have for one another. So I think that's really important to know that grief comes in stages. And finally, I want to just encourage you that in these next 12 days, that there is something that you can do and should do every day as you're preparing yourself for this next chapter in your life. When we're going into 2022, this is a next chapter in your life. This is a renewal. This is a reset of life for you. You can reset and you can choose, just like we're given each day to choose. We can be renewed and anew going into 2022. So this is your time. This is your opportunity to build and grow and have joy in your life. You need to know what that joy is as you're moving forward, but definitely it is yours to have. You deserve to have joy. You deserve to have peace, and you deserve to have healing present in your life as you're going through this journey. It's a very important place and space to be as you you open up this new chapter. And I just want to give some information in case you need to reach out. You want to schedule one-on-one sessions. You want to attend some workshops. We have some really great workshops coming up for 2022. You can find information from me at yourinspiredjourney.com. That's my website. Again, that's yourinspiredjourney.com. You can also Google me at Hetheru. That's Hetheru, Hetheru Miller. You can also find my Lessons for the Journey tools on Amazon. Lots of books there for you to enjoy. You can visit me also on my YouTube page. So, and you can also listen to some of my blog talk radio shows. When you Google me, those will show up too. So find the lesson that you need right now. Use the tools and stay tuned for more in 2022. Again, I am here also representing EMIY TV. And so you can reach us at EMIWorld.com. If you're looking for restoration for your sons, for the young men in your life, this is a good place for them to reset and start that chapter for 2022. We need our young men to be healthy because our young men then become the men, husbands, and fathers of tomorrow. So we need to make sure that we're helping them to heal properly, that they have the proper tools. And with EMIY TV and our host Calvin Mann, you can reach him one-on-one. And also in that process, you can reach him actually through Your Inspired Journey. You can get your coaching and one-on-one sessions through Your Inspired Journey as well for Calvin. And have your young men, your teens, your young men up to age 24 to reach out. Let them start their journey and their new chapter for 2022. So again, thank you for the opportunity to share this moment with you. I'm looking forward to what we're doing next. We'll be back at the beginning of the year, kicking off with EMIY TV, our host Calvin T. Mann, co-host Dave Patterson, and we'll have a good time on EMIY TV. Looking forward to seeing you soon. God bless and happy holidays.
Let's start the game over.